They told me once that the dead never stay quiet. And that night, I learned just how true that saying was. That's how it began. Not with thunder, not with a scream, just a whisper of a warning I never should have ignored. My name is Daniel. And before I tell you what happened inside that morgue, you need to understand one thing about me. I wasn't someone who believed in ghosts, curses, or the supernatural. I believed in locks, bolts, and explanations. I used to laugh at the idea of things that go bump in the night. But what happened changed that forever. I was a night guard at a medical facility on the outskirts of town. Not glamorous work, but it paid the bills. The place was old. Older than it should have been allowed to operate. Long hallways with peeling paint, buzzing lights that never stayed steady, and a chill that clung to your skin no matter how many layers you wore. People said the morgue there had a reputation. Staff whispered stories of bodies that moved when no one was looking, of strange noises echoing through the vents, of shadows that stretched too long. But I didn't buy into that. To me, it was just a building. Dead bodies don't walk, and empty halls don't talk. That night I started my shift like usual. The clock had just passed midnight when I walked the corridor toward the morgue. My flashlight beam bounced off the walls, making the cracked tiles glow a pale yellow. The silence pressed in heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. When I reached the steel doors, something felt off. I can't explain why. Just a prickling at the back of my neck, the kind of instinct that tells you something is wrong before your mind can catch up. I hesitated, then pushed inside. The morgue was colder than usual. My breath hung in the air like smoke. Rows of metal tables stretched before me, each one carrying a silent guest beneath a white sheet. There was nothing strange at first, just the usual stillness of death. I walked between the tables, counting them as I always did, a habit I never broke. 1, 2, 3, 10. 10 bodies, same as the logbook. But as I reached the far end of the room, I heard it. A sound. Not a creak, not the groan of pipes, but something sharper, like fingernails dragging slowly across metal. I froze. The sound came again, closer this time from the table right beside me. My heart hammered as I turned my head. The sheet on that table shifted. Just a small movement, almost like a ripple of fabric. My mind screamed at me. Drafts, faulty ventilation, anything logical. But there was no draft, no wind, nothing but that suffocating stillness. I stepped back, my shoes squeaking against the tiles. The sheet twitched again. This time, I saw the outline beneath it. An arm that shouldn't have been moving. I whispered to myself, "No, that's not possible." But then, the sheet slid off the table, and the hand underneath twitched. The night grew heavier, as if the darkness itself had thickened into something almost tangible, pressing against every inch of the old house. Ethan's flashlight flickered once, then twice, as he carefully stepped across the creaking floorboards, each groan echoing like a low whisper in the empty halls. The air smelled stale, a mixture of damp wood, mold, and something far more unsettling, something metallic and bitter that made his stomach churn. He paused near the staircase, straining to hear anything beyond the walls. Silence, heavy and suffocating, enveloped the space. But then, a faint scratching, soft and irregular, came from the attic above. It wasn't loud enough to be ordinary, but it was deliberate, patient, as if something, or someone, was waiting for him to notice. His heart slammed against his ribs, each beat a deafening drum in the quiet. Ethan tried to steady himself. "It's just the wind," he whispered. though the words tasted bitter in his mouth. He gripped the railing and began to climb, each step a negotiation with fear. The attic door was ajar, swinging slightly, though he was certain he had left it closed. A chill ran up his spine as he reached for the handle, the metal icy against his skin. Inside, the attic was a coffin of shadows. Dust motes floated in the beam of his flashlight, dancing like trapped spirits. He swept the light across the room, and then he saw it. Scratched into the wooden floor, strange symbols that seemed almost alive, curling and shifting when he wasn't looking directly at them. The smell of iron intensified, thick and pungent. Suddenly, a whisper slithered from the corner, barely audible but unmistakable. "Leave!" it hissed. Ethan froze, his breath fogging the air, his mind racing. He wanted to run to escape, but some invisible tether held him in place, forcing him to watch as a shadow stretched across the attic, moving against every natural rule of light and physics. The shape was amorphous, yet somehow intelligent. The whisper grew louder, forming words that scraped across his sanity. "You shouldn't have come. They're awake. They're watching." The attic seemed to pulse with a rhythm, the shadows twisting in response to the sound. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but curiosity, dangerous, stupid curiosity, drove him forward. Ethan's flashlight flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed him whole. Panic clawed at his chest as he fumbled for the batteries in his pocket. The whispers multiplied, surrounding him, emanating from every corner, every crack in the wooden walls. The symbols on the floor began to glow faintly, a sickly greenish light that revealed not just shapes, but figures. Thin, elongated forms moving impossibly fast, circling him, watching. He dropped the flashlight, and the figures recoiled as if burned, only to vanish instantly into the shadows. A single voice, guttural and ancient, echoed in his mind. "We remember. We never forget." Ethan's knees buckled. He fell to the floor, crawling backward toward the door. The shadows recoiled and then surged again, faster, closer, surrounding him with an oppressive weight. The attic's temperature dropped so suddenly he could see his breath, each exhale a fleeting ghost. With trembling hands, he finally found the flashlight, slamming it into place. The beam flared, illuminating the attic in stark white. And then, nothing. The symbols were gone, the shadows dissolved, the whispering ceased, only the faint echo of his own heartbeat remained. But the relief was short-lived. From the darkest corner, a small, deliberate tapping began, slow, methodical, like fingernails on wood. Ethan realized with a sinking horror that whatever had been here had not left. It had been waiting for him to notice. And somewhere deep in the house, a door slammed shut on its own, reverberating through the walls like a death knell. The silence was suffocating, as if the air itself had frozen, and every step the hero took on the rough floor echoed like a ghostly drum in the abandoned space. Moonlight leaked through the cracks in the crumbling walls, casting fragmented lines on the ground, as if marking an uncertain path through shifting shadows. With each breath, a hidden shiver ran through his body, as though something unseen was watching him from every corner, from every tiny crevice in the walls. He couldn't identify the source of the sound he had heard earlier. It was a strange whisper that vanished and returned unpredictably, as if the very place itself was breathing around him. He tried to calm himself, muttering softly, "No. Impossible. Just imagination." Yet he didn't believe his own words because his heart was already racing ahead. With each cautious step forward, the shadows began to take shape more clearly, moving unnaturally, as if the walls themselves were alive. The wind drifted through the openings, carrying faint echoes of footsteps that weren't his own, brushing against his ears like icy fingers. Every instinct in him screamed to flee, yet some inexplicable force urged him deeper into the darkness, toward a presence he could not yet see, but could feel in the marrow of his bones. Suddenly, a low, hollow sound resonated through the hall. A mixture of a growl and a whisper, vibrating through the walls and floor. He froze, feeling the vibrations in his chest. The temperature seemed to drop sharply, and a mist began to creep along the ground, curling around his ankles. He could see vague shapes forming in the fog, grotesque and twisted, flickering at the edge of his vision, always disappearing when he tried to focus. Panic surged, yet curiosity chained him in place. Every story he had ever heard about this forsaken place warned of a lurking terror, and yet, here he was, drawn by some unknown thread. He forced himself to breathe, forcing his mind to analyze shapes, shadows, sounds. They all obeyed some hidden rhythm. And then, as he stepped forward once more, the mist swirled violently, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, its face obscured, its presence commanding and alien. Time seemed to slow. Every instinct screamed to run, yet his feet were rooted. The figure lifted an arm, motioning toward a narrow passage just beyond the reach of the moonlight. The air thrummed with a strange energy, a mix of dread and anticipation. He knew, deep inside, that stepping forward meant crossing a boundary he could never return from. Yet the pull was irresistible, and with a trembling breath, he moved toward the unknown, shadows swallowing him, the whispering walls following, guiding, testing, and awaiting the revelation that could change everything. A chilling silence enveloped the abandoned hall, broken only by the distant echo of footsteps that weren't hers. Every shadow seemed to twitch. Every gust of wind whispered a secret she didn't want to hear. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination, but the gnawing fear in her chest told her otherwise. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl resonated from the darkness behind the broken columns. Her heart leapt. Instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. Slowly she turned, and there it was. Something massive, its eyes glowing like molten gold in the dim light, staring at her with an intelligence that made her blood run cold. Memories of the previous nights, the vanished footsteps, the fleeting glimpses of movement flooded her mind. She realized then that she wasn't being haunted by a ghost, but by something far older, far darker, lurking in the shadows of the building for decades, waiting for someone foolish enough to cross its path. The creature stepped forward, the sound of its claws scraping against the cracked floor sending shivers down her spine. She stumbled backward, her breath ragged, mind racing for a plan. The hall seemed to stretch endlessly, walls shifting as if alive, trapping her in a maze of terror. Her hand brushed against the cold metal of a rusted door. With trembling fingers, she pushed it open and bolted inside. The creature's roar echoed behind her, shaking the very structure. She ran through winding corridors, each turn more twisted than the last, until she finally found a narrow stairwell leading upward. Ascending, each step felt heavier than the last, as if the building itself resisted her escape. At the top, she emerged into the faint light of the moon, filtering through shattered windows. For a moment, she dared to hope. But then the wind carried a whisper. A voice, soft and venomous, repeating her name. She turned, but the hall was empty. The moonlight revealed only the debris of the old building, yet the eyes in the shadows had not left her. She understood now. Survival wasn't about escaping the building. It was about surviving what had claimed it long before she ever entered. And as the first hints of dawn bled into the sky, she realized the truth. Some things do not belong to the realm of light or shadow. They exist in the spaces between, where fear is eternal and curiosity is fatal.